Now that we've covered a few basics, let's take a bit more targeted look at ChatGPT. Now, ChatGPT is a large language model trained stimuli response AI. It was trained initially on a corpus of words, or words and subwords that are indexed, and then vast amounts of written text and word embeddings to learn basic word relationships and crude context. It then subsequently increased the volume of text, or parameters, and sequentially relevant phrases in written text via online book repositories, Reddit, Wikipedia, etc., to learn even more about the relationships of words. It did this primarily through methods of proximity, or what words are most likely within a given context to be around or near a given word. I discuss spatial proximity in advanced AI design in my books and online articles, but the key point is relative proximity is a dimensional cognitive shortcut. ChatGPT training is currently moving to trillions of parameters for the latest incantations of the system. And parameters are all the options or weight measures and biases of the relationships of words in human text, as we have already discussed. Now, there are approximately 500,000 English words. Now, some would say a lot less officially, but we have slang and we have other words from other cultures, so about 500,000 words. And that equals about 250 billion parameters or relevance weights for each word to every other word in the English corpus, and more for other languages. If you add a third word layer, that number grows to a 1 with 17 zeros behind it. Large language models are trained on text writing, which lowers this number to hundreds of billions, as there are limited formations of English phrases as we see in the current ChatGPT versions. But this will grow as context dimensions in AI systems become deeper. Currently in Chat AI systems in the tens of thousands of dimensions, but humans comprehend trillions of contextual dimensions. Now, the slide says unsupervised in its initial training, which is true, but it is supervised as a multi-stage ensemble model in today's versions, which include a human-supervised quasi-ethics layer. Tokenization is applying a token to each element or sub-element, i.e. words or portions thereof. Stemming is removing the ending of words to reveal their base word context. So you remove the EDs and the S's off the ends of words, etc. Cut down the word size. And lemmatization produces a most likely connection between words based on a consistent context or tense, sort of like a focal lens does to an image. ChatGPT is a generative pre-trained transformer, meaning it applies a transformer architecture to interpret a stimuli, or a prompt, of text, and a generative architecture to produce a response based on its best learning. And I'll discuss generative architecture in more detail coming up. The system is also regressive in that it generates a response with reference to a prompt and carries crude context in a form of attention, which we have already discussed. The, quote, hidden representation used are narrow context weights or only a few contextual layers. They are not deep context like we humans use, yet. Encoders and transformers are layered in ChatGPT, and we previously touched on encoders, representations, and transformers earlier, and we'll dive deeper into these designs in the labs and far deeper in the Dev bootcamp. And here we can again see the use of softmax and a probability distribution, which we also discussed previously, in this case to ascertain the weights or parameters. We will see the foundation of softmax in the neural net lab. Okay, it says on this slide that ChatGPT is self-supervised, but it still has a heavy dose of human supervision. So what is this slide about? Well, OpenAI is experimenting with an early form of AI self-improvement, and this resides on a structure of self-supervision. Now, this is where the system learns the patterns in data without explicit labels to guide it, mostly through a notion of relevant proximity and on a foundation of the earlier word-to-vec dimensional models. It also uses something called pretext tasks that guide the AI to more effectively identify data structures and relationships, but we won't dive into the details of pretext tasks here. In image AI, these can hide or mask part of an image and then have the AI fill in the missing pieces, learning how to build complex images. And another technique is something we'll be discussing coming up here, or autoencoding. In text autoencoding, pieces of text fragments are given as input and the AI must identify the missing parts. So this is how we sort of use these pretext tasks to learn a little bit more about, or have the AI learn. Now we do this in elementary school by giving children sentences with missing words and asking them to fill in the blanks. And the phrasing in the slide actually says self-supervised objective, meaning the goal is self-supervision or general unsupervised self-learning, or GUSL neural net. So ChatGPT was initially and still is trained on the internet. We all know what's on the internet, what could possibly go wrong. And once again, ChatGPT used and continues to use human supervision, primarily in earlier versions, to generate training data and review output, and today is a security mod and a feedback mechanism, or full comprehensive bias. So that's the quick ChatGPT overview. But later we'll look at what it takes to build your own model and or mod, and how to use Chat AI plugins, not just from OpenAI, but Meta's Llama, and others. ChatGPT is really just another search website with weights in a soon-to-be trillion parameter matrix behind the scenes that has learned word relationships. That's it. You should also be able to see that training on non-optimized data produces a vast amount of inefficiency, bias, and garbage in. So this bad data completely infests ChatGPT, but it was expedient, and alternatives are just starting to emerge, such as AI systems themselves beginning to clean the input data. Of course, the question is, how are they applying the cleaning algo, and whose bias are they using for that data? So let's take a quick peek a bit deeper inside the ChatGPT engine. What the system is doing is looking at the query that you type in and applying a model of learned weights for the words within the query, i.e. the relevance of words in the query to each other. The output are a series of vectors. Then the system applies a pseudo-learned context of lesser used words to infer a relative context of words in the input string. For example, which words imply greater and more important context than the others. You do this too in your head as you interpret speech text or other perceptive stimuli. You sort of rank which words are most important to the context. The next step is to rank the probabilities of relevance to focus attention to the context. Now, all of this is then applied as attention scores, as a form of pattern control and relevance measurement, all to attain an increasingly accurate prediction of the next word in a generative stage, or the stage where the response to the stimuli is generated. Now, I've published articles and books on the nature and design of advanced artificial response and stimuli, so if you need more detail on how advanced AI systems perceive the world and respond to it, you can look there, or for my articles on the internet. Next, ChatGPT begins generating output in the form of a response or a continuation of the stimuli-response flow. If I ask you what is a cat and then stop, you will note the break in conversation, or the submit button in ChatGPT, and begin generating words back to me as a response. You will also hold the context of the stimuli to keep your response coherent, and you will follow the rules of the English or some other language as you create the response, drawing on your knowledge of the various contexts needed to complete the task and the relationships of the words. ChatGPT doesn't do this. Instead, it holds a general context and then produces the most probable next word in a generative sequence from the relationships it has learned over and over and over. It is mimicking all the text it has read and is puking back the words that appeared in the text as the most likely next word in the response, with a small element of randomness added to reduce repetition and improve the human-like flow. It is not cognitively aware because it has no self-awareness. It does not think through the issue with feelings and emotion and self-aware goals and self-created bias, etc., etc., etc. It's a mimic. Later in the presentation, I'll look at some plugins to ChatGPT, but for now, let's move on and take a peek at the generative image AI, DALL-E.